Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and notifications button for all the good stuff we've got coming.
Uh, that was a hell of a time during that time. There were so many interesting people involved with the rep at the time. A lot of, I mean, Zubal Kachadorian was around back then, and Woody Miller, and so many actors. I can't even think of them all. I've actually touched base with Tim Rhodes uh, not too long ago,
Yeah.
and he was one of my favorite actors back then. And of course, Robert. Heck, when I started, the scene shop was a bank.
What were we using the garage for then?
We didn't own it then.
Oh,
It was still somebody else's property at that time. We didn't own the garage,
till like
and
the
that was
80s, right?
well. It was really kind of wild. You know, it was just a short time after the riots, and things were still pretty uneasy. The neighborhood was definitely formidable back then. I worked most of the time during the night because I was going to school at the time. So going down the middle of the street, down Woodrow Wilson at 10 or 11 o'clock at night was kind of dicey sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, but it was fun. I had a ball, man. It was a great time. Back then, I wasn't a designer. I was more a props guy. And but Bruce Bruce saw that I had some chops, and he figured that he would probably try to let me into the design end pretty quick. So right after Three Penny, he got me going on some designs. And I remember my first my first design that it was 2 1 act plays. It was the Medea
Yep.
and the Dutch,
Yep.
and man, and it was I didn't know anything about perspective or anything back then, and so uh, Bruce and I worked real closely on the design for the Medea, but he kind of let me go on my own a little bit for the design of the Dutchman, and I came up with some really interesting ideas for that show, as I recall. And I'm trying to remember who played the male lead in the Dutchman. Was that
Oh,
Robert?
it wasn't Robert. It was D, and I can't remember his name. I did not know him.
That was
I'll have to
that
look
was,
that one up.
and the Medea was really cool. And and I mean, no one's on the phone with us right now, so we're just kind of trading ideas. But I remember the thing that blew me away most was when I was working with Bruce doing props for Three Penny. I saw John, the painter. What was his last name?
Knox.
Knox.
John
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Knox.
I should never forget that because I learned more watching him than I ever did, at school. And he just blew me away. He was so fast and so complete. And golly, all these people are floating through my head. Uh, Dick Smith. Dick and I got to be real good friends. We used to go out to lunch together, and he would take me to places that he knew his wife didn't want me to go to. I always say, "Don't tell Laura. Don't tell Laura I took you here, and don't tell her I ate this sandwich. She'll get on my case." It's like that, you know. But he was funny. He used to crack me up all the time.
It's gold. Detroit rap history.
It was an opening for a show that I simply cannot remember the show. It totally escapes me. He went backstage, not backstage, right into the middle of the of the audience, of the auditorium, and started refocusing the lights. Like, and you know how he used to just run up the ladder real fast and then do whatever he had to do and then run back down and then take that ladder, fold it up, and run someplace else. I mean, that's how he did things. Always just zipping right here, zipping around, doing everything. And he went up there, and I'm telling you right now, he was so wobbly on the ladder. I was worried for him. And he went up there to change something or another, and he got zapped, and it blew him right off the ladder. I mean, he landed right on his back, and you could almost see the smoke coming out of his ears. It was so like that kind of a zap. And he got up and he brushed himself up, and he looked at me and said, "Man, what a rush." And then he just kept on going like nothing happened. Right? I learned a lot from Dick, just about, he taught me about painting, about spattering and stuff like that, so that the light would do certain things when you switch from hot colors to warm colors and cool colors and all that stuff. He was a brilliant lighting designer. Burr was talking about Scully and Royce because I designed that show and I propped it. I built the airplane. I built the cameras. I built everything. Every single prop in that show was handmade, and I made them all. Bruce called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, listen, I got a favor to ask you." I said, "Okay, Bruce, what kind of crazy thing you want me to do on this one?" That was my first response. He said, "Well, I just got to have a guy, fishing in this lake, and then I got to have him, like rowing a boat through this lake, and then later on I got to have him flying over the top of this lake, and then I've got to have him crash land into a cow." And I said, "Bruce, this is gonna cost you." he had so many scene changes, went back and forth, and I remember we used the same tree that I designed for fencing. So I designed fences, and that show was just a knockout. Council was so incredible in that show. And the funny part about it was in that show, and I can remember so many different things, so many little side stories. Council, his acting was superb in that show. Even in all of the rehearsals, his acting was amazing. But the one thing he couldn't do, because he never did it much as a kid, is he couldn't swing a baseball bat. And it was driving Bruce crazy, because he almost was a professional baseball player himself at one time. And to watch a man not be able to swing a baseball bat was just driving him nuts. And it never came together until opening night. And on opening night, he nailed it. And the rest is history. Is one of the greatest shows we ever did. And Council was fabulous, just fabulous. And then there was another show I got that actually won an award for, I think, T for Two. I won an award for the set design on that. I can remember the night that I met Boswell. Boswell was the guy that brought me into the theater. And I was just at the bar, and all of a sudden, I heard this incredible clank and clatter coming through the door. It was just an amazing sound. And I turned around, and here was this guy pulling his bicycle into the lobby of the bar, and he had a cast from his neck all the way down to his fingertips on his left arm. And he came up to the bar just like that, just this, and he was just wobbling his way to the bar. And I think the bartender's name was Moishe. And he said, Moishe, give me a B&B on ice. And he turned to me and he said, hey, my name's Boz. What's yours? And that was the start of a friendship that we had for years and years and years. But that night he said, hey, why don't you come on over to the theater sometime? I said, theater? He said, yeah, the Detroit Repertory Theater. We could use a guy with your talents. I said, So one day I showed up, man, that's history. I started right in, and I really, when I met all these people and I saw the shop and I saw where they rehearsed and I looked at the theater and I saw this unusual group of people and I felt at home. I can't describe it any other way. I just wanted to be there, and then I wanted to be there. It became a second family for me and Barbara and John and Dick and of course Bruce and Boz. Boz and I did all kinds of fun stuff together inside the theater, outside the theater. It, I mean, he got me closer in some ways to the cast corridor than I ever had been as I was learning my skills in the sculpture department at Wayne State. And I just felt this incredible sense of being part of a family. And he was wonderful, and I can smell her cookies right now. And I remember designing for everybody there. I designed for Bruce, I designed for Dee, I designed for Barb, I designed for Harry, I designed for everybody. Ruben Labuka, Um, and I designed, let's see, I must have designed, I bet I designed 30 shows there, but I don't know. I can't remember them all. Uh, and there's so many really good shows, but the one that I think was my best set was my first set. I remember doing the homecoming, and Council, the lead, he was the female lead, and Boswell was one of the brothers. And I created this floating set. The interesting part about the set was that it was a Tudor 2-story, and they had to have a staircase that they went up all the way into the second floor of this building, and they had to be able to go all the way up the stairs, turn, and disappear. And of course, the, the how what was the proscenium height there? 9 feet, 11 feet? I can't even remember. And he had Council was 6'3", something like that. So he had to go up 12 stairs and still not hit his head on the ceiling, turn a corner, and disappear. That was fun. It was a great set. Ask Boswell. But that was also the set that me and Bruce had a big disagreement about right at the end, just the night before, during one of the last tech rehearsals. And I got so steamed, I just ran out of the building. I don't think I came back in for several months. And it was just the difference on design. And and that was one thing that Bruce and I we never held it back from each other. If we had some pretty interesting bouts. Was this? I respected Bruce more than almost anybody else in my life at the time, even with all the hard stuff that was going on, because his concept and his devotion to the theater was absolute. And he was doing something that I thought was just absolutely incredible. And he showed me so much about community and about the sheer guts of just showing up, being there. You know, he taught me a lot about just exactly that, showing up, making sure that whatever it is you said that you promised you would do, that you did it. And you did it. But it was always such a organic experience. And the hardest part for me was when I left the rep, because by that time, the things that were going on in my life and the things that were going on at the rep didn't quite mesh. And it hurt me so much to not go there again and be part of all of that, because of my own commitments and my own values that I had to leave. And it really hurt. Not me, I wasn't mad or angry at anybody, but it just left a void that that never was filled again by any particular other group, except one maybe. But the rep was always the most important. At one time I always thought I was going to gravitate to the rep, and I would be living right. I'd probably buy a house near the rep, and that would be my whole life, was going to be the rep. And then I met my wife, and we left. And and I became a freelance designer and designed some wonderful things outside the rep. But things that I did design for the rep, wow, I can't even name them all. There was so much great stuff. I mean, it was all of it was the people. When we all get together every now and then, I'll come up to the office at the rep, and before Boz retired, we'd all just sit there and just laugh our asses off,
Mhm.
and just have so much fun talking about all the things that transpired. I remember the first prop that I made at the rep was for Mac the Knife's sword cane. And that was the first prop I ever made. And the second one was a harpsichord that I still think the rep owns. I remember the first time that I got paid to make art was from Bruce Milan. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that I was getting paid to make art. It just absolutely amazed me. And it was something, it was so amazing. I can't even begin to tell you how much I felt valued by that. It put, it gave me a lot of confidence in myself. But it was like that all through the texture and the happenings of the Detroit Repertory Theater experience. For me, was just all these incredible layers of people and exposure and happenings, and it was all so important, and it never stopped being important, and it continues to be important, and I thank all of you for that.